Major John Hallam, the Lancashire Area Secretary of the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, will explain the early history of the regiment.
From the landing of William of Orange at Torbay in 1688. He landed there on the 5th of November, and where he was met by a number of noblemen and gentlemen, some of whom were then commissioned to raise regiments for his service. One of those was a man called Colonel Sir Robert Peyton, who I suppose today you would describe as a soldier of fortune, a mercenary, but he had been fighting in William's service in Holland earlier. Well, on the 20th of November, William granted Peyton a commission to form a regiment, and the regiment which he formed was the 20th regiment to be formed in the infantry of the line. 6 companies were raised originally. They were raised in and around Exeter, and in the first battle that they ever fought was in 1690, and that was the Battle of the Boyne in Northern Ireland. Peyton himself didn't survive long enough to see that campaign. The regiment by then was under the command of a man called Gustavus Hamilton, and the battles in Ireland against the army of King James II were the battles of the Boyne, the sieges of Limerick, Athlone, and the Battle of Aghrim, and the regiment in fact stayed in Ireland until 1702.
The Battle of Minden was fought on the 1st of August 1759. The 20th Regiment, now the Lancashire Fusiliers, was part of an Anglo-Hanoverian army fighting the French under the command of a German general, Prince Ferdinand of Brunswick. The battle was significant because it was the first time that infantry attacking cavalry on their flat feet had actually defeated them.
Gentlemen, we will now rise and drink the solemn silence to all who fell in the
Every year now, on or about the 1st of August, we hold a dinner in commemoration of the Battle of Minden. At the end of the dinner, we drink a silent toast to those who fell at Minden. Again, the origins of this silent toast are not known, but I think it is a very moving tribute to those men who created military history. On their way into the battle, the legend is that the soldiers marched through fields of wild roses. And having been on the battlefield myself, there is still a lot of wild ground there, and there are still a lot of wild roses. So the legend would seem to have some backing. It is said that the soldiers picked the wild roses and put them in their hats before the battle started. At the end of the dinner, after the silent toast, it is traditional for newly joined officers to eat a rose. Again, where this tradition started, I don't know, and though I have my suspicions that because of the significance of roses to the battle, perhaps some officers at some time, again in the middle of the last century, having had too much to drink, decided it would be a great jape to eat some roses which were decorating the table.
On the first Sunday in August, a social for all ranks is held at the Wellington Barracks in Bury to commemorate the Battle of Minden. A wreath is laid at the monument, which was designed by Sir Edwin Lutyens, who had also designed the cenotaph in Whitehall. He gave his services free out of regard for the regiment. In 1782, the
The Battle of Inkerman was fought on the 5th of November 1854 during the Crimean War, when 12,000 British and French troops defeated a Russian army of some 60,000. It's known as the Soldiers' Battle because the battle was fought either in the thick fog or the dark, and the generals really couldn't see to direct the armies about. The regimental officers and the regimental soldiers of the British Army fought the battle on their own.
In 1873, the East Devon Regiment moved to Bury, took over Wellington Barracks, and on the 1st of July 1881 became the Lancashire Fusiliers.
The Battle of Omnia was fought in 1898, and the 2nd Battalion Lancashire Fusiliers were involved in it. General Kitchener was the army commander. And the battle was the climax to the Nile expedition to avenge the death of General Charles Gordon at the hands of the Mahdi some years earlier. The Dervish force was destroyed at Omdurman. The relevant casualties were significant. The British Army had 147 killed and injured. The Dervish forces had some 9,500 killed and 16,000 wounded. To my mind, the significant part of the Battle of Omdurman is that it demonstrated for the first time the power of the machine gun. During the Boer War, volunteers and the militia of the regiment fought alongside the regular battalion for the first time. The Battle of Spine Kop in January 1900, the 2nd Battalion suffered severe casualties, though their bravery was later recognised. As a result of the regiment's bravery displayed at Spine Kop, King Edward VII recognised the service of the regiment by the granting of the right to wear the primrose hackle in the headdress, and also to the regimental motto, Omnia Audax, daring in everything, which had been used unofficially for some years previously. And the 3rd honour was granted in that he allowed us to have the Red Rose of Lancaster emblazoned on our colours.
Oh, we don't want to lose you, but we think you ought to go for your king and your...
In 1940, Europe was plunged into what became known as the First World War, with a scale of slaughter and destruction hitherto unknown in military history. The Lancashire Fusiliers produced 33 battalions, and with casualties and replacements for casualties, I estimate that some 100,000 men went through the ranks of the Lancashire Fusiliers in that period. Perhaps the greatest achievement of the regiment during the First World War was the landing of the 1st Battalion on what was known as W Beach on the Gallipoli Peninsula on the 25th of April 1915. The Turks were dug into the cliffs in very strong positions. They had placed barbed wire in the water, and as the regiment landed from the boats of HMS Euryalus, they were met by a devastating storm of fire. Notwithstanding that, They cut their way through the barbed wires, stormed the heights, and successfully took their objective. And the 6 VCs, because they were won between 6:30 and 8:30 on a Sunday morning, have ever since become known in the regiment as 6 VCs before breakfast. The first Gallipoli Sunday was held in 1917, and it's been held in Bury ever since. It is a memorial, it started out as a memorial to those men who were killed during the Gallipoli campaign, because, as well as the 1st Battalion, 5 other battalions of Lancashire Fusiliers were involved in the campaign. The ceremony has been held every year since 1917 and continues to this day.
George Peake of Salford is a 96-year-old veteran of the Gallipoli campaign. He tells his story.
I can't think of the name of them, but they attacked with 1,000 men. 700 was killed right away, and the other 300 that was left had bullets in them all over, here and there, and they kept on firing until the Turks got away. And they were the ones that was taken away. The padre was going round looking at them, and helping them, and he got a shelter himself. And that was the beginning, the very beginning. Well, our boat, their boat was a River Clyde. Our boat was coming in. Our boat came in, and we jumped on the River Clyde, the boat, and climbed over and onto the sea, and as I've told you, onto the landing that way. And the French had just made this big attack, and they're all killed. And then we went to the left and attacked from there. But the Turks attacked us, very well in June the 4th. I remember that. June the 4th they attacked us. And we were in defence. I think the Berry lot had been somewhere else attacking them, attacking the Turks. And I think they had made an attack on a village called Trippier, just before Atibaba.
The 6 VCs before breakfast who brought glory to the regiment after the landing at Cape Helles, Gallipoli. In the 1914-18 war, 33 battalions of the Lancashire Fusiliers were formed. No fewer than 20 took part in the Passchendaele offensive and all other campaigns of that war. The regiment were awarded 18 Victoria Crosses, more than any other infantry regiment of the British Army.
Upon the armistice in November 1918, there were 14 battalions of Lancashire Fusiliers in the field. By the end of 1919, there were 3. At the peak of the Second World War, there were 11 battalions, so the changing nature of modern warfare deprived some of them of seeing any fighting. In fact, the regular battalions by 1920 were down to 2. And one of those, the 1st Battalion, was sent to Ireland and took part in the troubles in Ireland until it was returned to England in 1922. It then saw quite a lot of service in England before being sent out to Gibraltar, to Egypt, and finally ended up in China, in Tientsin, as part of the International Diplomatic Guard on the diplomatic compound in Peking. As such, it was there during the so-called China incident, and finally in 1939 it was returned to India, where it remained until it took part in the Chindik campaign in 1944. The 2nd Battalion began its interwar career abroad in India, for which it embarked on the 21st of October 1919. It was under the command of Major Dick Willis, VC, who was one of the 6 before breakfast. They remained in India until 1934, before returning to England and Colchester, from where they were mobilised for the Dunkirk campaign in late 1939, early 1940. In the meantime, the 4 TA battalions, the 5th from Bury, the 6th Rochdale, and the 7th and 8th from Salford, remained training and recruiting as TA battalions with varying levels of success until they too were mobilised in 1939. In fact, the 7th Battalion had been converted from infantry to a searchlight battalion.
Battalions were involved in France in 1939 and early 1940, culminating in the withdrawal at Dunkirk. During the withdrawal of the British Expeditionary Force from France, Captain Porritt, the Radcliffe Member of Parliament, was killed in a bombing raid on the small French town of Seclin. After the end of the war, ex-Sergeant Harry Rowe made considerable effort and negotiations and successfully persuaded the French authorities to name a square in the town in honour of Captain Porritt. Moving by night and laying up by day, Harry Rowe and his companions made their way to Dunkirk. Harry tells his story of the beaches and eventual rescue.
I arrived on the outskirts of Dunkirk on the 1st of June when the town was being heavily bombed. I took refuge in a cellar with some French people. They weren't very happy about this, and so when the bombing had ceased, I made my way onto the beach. There I met up with a sergeant, Sergeant Slater from the Fusiliers, and he said, well, we'll try to get you out of this if we can do. He went to see the beachmaster, and the beachmaster said, if you can get 50 people together, there's a chance of getting you off. However, as soon as he got 50 people together, the bombing started again, and everyone scattered. So he had to start and try to collect another 50. In the meantime, the Germans had started shelling the jetty and the oil tanks, which they had set ablaze, and the smoke from the oil tanks swept over the beaches and protected us to a certain extent from the German bombers. However, I didn't see any sign of any panic at all. Some of the lads were playing cricket in between the bombings, some were playing football. And however, after some time, I think it was about 2 nights, Sergeant Slater did manage to get 50 together, and we started to make our way to the jetty. The Germans had got the range of this and started shelling it, and there were dead bodies all over the place. As soon as the holes appeared in the jetty, planks were put across for people to run across to get to the next safe bit. However, when we got to the end, there was a ship waiting. I don't know what it was, but we managed to jump and get onto it, and there I was given a corned beef sandwich and a pot of tea, and on our way to England.
After the war, Harry Rowe became the licensee of the Cemetery Hotel in Ramsbottom. The name was changed to the Fusilier, after a suggestion that a pub of that name would be appropriate in the district where the Fusiliers were mustered. The 1VC won by the regiment in the Second World War was by Fusilier Frank Jefferson of the 2nd Battalion, whilst in action at Monte Cassino in Italy. Fusilier Wallace Jackson was in Frank Jefferson's company at Cassino.
I was in C Company, the 2nd Battalion of the Lancashire Fusiliers. I was with Frank Jefferson at Cassino Monastery when he knocked out at the tank. There was quite a lot of our fellows had got killed there. I'm lucky for Frank that we're here today, like with him, you know. I'm sorry, like, that we've lost some of the biggest part of our pals. So we went on after to try and roust the Germans after the tank, the second tank was moving away. Jefferson reloaded the picket gun and run after this other second tank, but he hadn't the chance to get close enough to it. I lost contact of Jefferson then when I went away, and I met some of the lads like that was well and truly quite happy of what Jefferson did. He was a grand fella.
Each year, the veterans of the campaign at Monte Cassino hold a meeting at the Fusiliers Social Club at the site of Wellington Barracks. This social gathering is attended by all ranks. Lieutenant Colonel Hill, who was a captain and company commander at the time of the battle, is present. Some months after the Second World War, the Bury Town Council decided to award the Freedom of the Borough to the regiment. Bury's award ceremony took place on 3rd of August 1946 at Gig Lane Football Ground, attended by thousands of people. Similar awards took place in Salford and Rochdale. The award granted in perpetuity the right, title, privilege, honour and distinction of marching through the streets of the town on ceremonial occasions with drums beating, bands playing, flags flying and bayonets fixed. A few years after the Second World War, the future of the Wellington Barracks became uncertain. Various suggestions were put forward for its future use. Rumours suggested an adjunct of Strangeways Prison or an old folks' home. Eventually the corporation bought the land for houses and a playing field. The barracks was closed in 1961 and demolished in 1969, leaving 2 small blocks to house regimental offices, the Regimental Museum and the Regimental Association Club.
As a result of the Defence White Paper published in July 1967 by the then Secretary of State for Defence, Dennis Healy, it was decided that the 4 English Fusilier regiments should amalgamate to form one large regiment. Those 4 regiments were the Royal Northumberland Fusiliers, the Royal Warwickshire Fusiliers, the Royal Fusiliers, and the Lancashire Fusiliers. That amalgamation came into being on St George's Day, the 23rd of April 1968, when of course there were 4 battalions stationed at various places around the world. The Lancashire Fusiliers became the 4th Battalion of the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, and they were then stationed in Hong Kong. In August 1969, they came back from Hong Kong to Wheaton Camp at Blackpool and were disbanded in December 1969.
After duty in Germany and the Gulf War, the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers came home to be disbanded and merge with the 1st Battalion. On the 1st of August 1992, the last day of the 3rd Battalion's existence, it was given the great honour of taking over guard duty at the Tower of London from the Irish Guards and taking part in the ceremony of the Keys.
concert march was held because we needed to raise some money for a project in the museum. In fact, the restoration of the uniform of Surgeon Arnott, who served in the regiment from 1799 to 1823 and was one of the surgeons who attended Napoleon at his death in St. Helena. The cost of conservation is enormous these days, and we just didn't have the funds available.
The money raised, just over £1,300, was divided between the Fusiliers Museum and two other charities.
Lance Corporal Millsap, who served in the Gulf War, is to receive his Gulf War medal from the Mayor of Bury.
Or with the 3rd Battalion, the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, as the driver of a warrior armoured personnel carrier. And as such, he was involved in 3 or 4 actions that were fought during the Gulf War. So without further ado, please let me know when you
Can I congratulate you on that achievement? I better not stick it in there.
Nearly.
Not quite sure. Whether that's right, but certainly. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Since 1991, great changes have started to take place within the armed forces of this country. And the Fusiliers have been affected by them just as much as many other regiments have. We have already lost our 3rd Regular Battalion, and our 5th Territorial Battalion has been heavily affected, and the company here in Bury is no longer commanded by a Fusilier battalion commander. What the future holds, I don't know. It's in the hands of the present government. What I do know is that Fusiliers, whether they be from Lancashire or anywhere else in our regimental areas, will continue to do their duty and continue to provide the professional military service which they always have done.